Hello, everyone. Getting set up to the best of my abilities, and I hope you can hear me. Currently, I have spent the last half hour trying to reboot my system. My typical problems. I'm sure some of you are ready to crawl through my live stream right now and kill me for not getting a better computer. And every time I think I have the resources to upgrade, some other bill, some other expense comes up, and I just don't. And I need to stop making excuses and fix this thing. So I hope you guys can hear me. And in the meantime, I should be right at the edge of being able to communicate. My Discord is coming up right now. So, in the meantime, I'm going to assume that I can be heard. And I'm going to go ahead and start ranting for a little while until I can be, till I get an idea as to whether or not I can be heard. And hopefully, you guys can hear me one way or the other. So the topic that I brought up today, and sorry, making some adjustments here, was whether or not we're going to be able to get the Starship operational and to Mars by 2024 or 2026, as this very, very optimistic prediction has come down from Elon Musk not very long after he had some cynical words to say about the Starship and about our chances of making it to Mars. And I have to admit, it's a little confusing. It could just be dependent on his mood or something along those lines. It's hard to say for certain. My Discord is finally coming up. Thank God. It's installing updates, blah, blah, blah. You know how this goes. But nevertheless, it is a bit confusing. It does make one wonder, are we going to be able to get the Starship operational in that kind of time frame? And are we going to be able to get it human rated in that kind of time frame? I mean, these are some really, really aggressive and optimistic predictions that Elon is making right now, right on the heels of making a statement about how we may never reach Mars in his lifetime if we don't have exponential improvements to the program. Has something changed to make him more optimistic, or is his mood just kind of swung back to a more optimistic feeling? It's kind of hard to figure all of this out, and I have to admit, but that's the nature of dealing with Elon Musk. It's difficult to crawl inside the fellow's head. And that's part of, I think, the frustration of following him and part of the genius. I am up and running. If you wish to be participating, it's on the Patreon section of the Discord server under questions and answers. And let's have a look at everybody. It looks like people are typing. Let's hope that we can. Can I be heard? First of all, let's be certain about that. Okay, loud and clear. Excellent, excellent. So, yeah, what I was afraid of being a disaster ended up just being a 4-minute delay, so not that big of a deal. Okay, so Framrick has already made a statement. Starship to orbit 2021, refueling demonstrated 2021 to 2022. The first vessel to Mars launches 2022, perhaps. Cargo Starship crashes on Mars in 2024 and then lands in 2026. A cargo Starship, that is. I have spoken, says Framrick. Yeah, I would say that is a realistic time frame for cargo ships. The big question we're going to have is, when are we really going to feel comfortable about putting highly trained astronauts people with lots and lots of time and money invested in these people, and try to get them to Mars, when there are so many tests that are going to have to be undergone with this. Never tried to land anything remotely this huge on the ship. By the way, the mug is back and ready for destruction. I'm only less than 7,000 subscribers away. So if you haven't subscribed, please do so I can blow up this Boeing mug. M2, hello M2. I think you're pretty new to the channel. We need to send infrastructure nonstop. Set up Martian Starlink. Yeah, I would say there's a lot of things about infrastructure that needs to be set up. And I actually talked about this 2 videos ago, where I said that the Falcon Heavy could actually start setting up some infrastructure to really demonstrate that Elon is serious about this. Remember, it's $90 million per launch. And a lot of the organizations that have already created some of these 3D printed habitations, that sort of thing, they could start their experiments on Mars in creating these habitations right now with the Falcon Heavy. We don't have to wait for the Starship to start setting up staging and infrastructure on the surface of Mars, if indeed we are planning to go all the way there by 2024 or 2026. So yeah, Framick is saying astronauts Mars 2028, 2030. I actually said 2028 at one point, so I'm actually not too far off. I'm pretty much right there with you, Framick. And then Ouija Lego says late 20s, 2030, reasonable for first human Mars landing. Yeah, I would say so too. All of this is, dependent on a lot of unanswered questions. I am very interested to see, and this keeps getting delayed, damn it. But, and I know this is a frustration to a lot of people. As a matter of fact, To the Future made a comment about the frustration of always having to do "we're almost ready for the hot" videos. And I feel their pain. I really do. And that's why I do other topics. And it hurts me on the views. I don't get nearly as many views when I don't talk about the Starship. But I'm just not going to keep saying that the hop is about to happen over and over and over again. I'm just not going to keep talking about that. I'm going to talk about other topics until we have something to talk about. Now, granted, I did talk about the Starship in my last 2 videos, but that's because I thought that the launch was a few days away, and it still kind of is. But I'm really hoping it actually does hop on Monday, and then we really have something to talk about. We really have things to analyze, and I'm extremely interested in that. Yeah, moody emo Elon Musk. Yes, indeed. Let's hope a lot of this does have something to do with his moods, rather than anything purely factual. The fact that we could have humans on Mars in 2026, or we could have humans on Mars in 2050. It's that uncertain right now. If that's not his mood talking, if that's more technical that we're talking here, and there are things he knows about this project that we don't, and sometimes it slips out, his concerns, then a lot rides on what's going to happen on Monday, what's hoping happening on Monday. Yeah, SpaceX are concerned that this test is pretty crucial, says Andy, a fundamental issue. Yeah, I agree. I think this test is very crucial. And I think that's one of the reasons I mentioned in my most recent video that my first video about the hop was over 60 days ago. And it was supposed to be imminent then, and yet it still hasn't happened. And that is unusual for SpaceX. SpaceX is usually balls to the wall, pushing things as fast as they can. And in this case, they seem to be going a lot more carefully about this particular test. And I do believe it's because they have a lot riding on it. It's absolutely vital that this thing get somewhere close to 15 kilometers and get to its belly flop position so they can test out those flaps and test out the aerodynamic qualities of the ship. If they don't get to do that in this test, then it's essentially a wasted test. It just, all it does is test whether or not the ship can get to 15 kilometers, and we know it can. So that's not the point, especially since it's only using atmospheric Raptors anyway. The Starship isn't going to be using atmospheric Raptors, at takeoff ever. It's even going to be using vacuum Raptors for the most part on Mars because of the state of the atmosphere. So really, the takeoff, the ascent, none of this is nearly as important as what comes on the way down. That's way, way more important. Framrick says, I reckon Starship will be successful to orbit by 2021. You are optimistic. I'm not so sure. We'll see. Super Heavy is basically a big Falcon 9 first stage. Starship is a good option to orbit. Entry, descent, landing, dependent on legs and heat shields. Lots of difficulty. Yeah. That's and maybe Super Heavy is that simple. It does use different fuel than the Falcon 9. It uses different engines than the Falcon 9. So it's static firing that puppy is going to be a little bit different than a Falcon Heavy. But still, yeah, I mean, I made a comparison between it and the Russian N1, the Soviet N1, which had a very tragic end, and that's a scary comparison. But at the same time, the last time we had a rocket with that many engines and that much thrust that we tried to get off the ground, we as a species, that's what it was. The Saturn V used a lot fewer engines and much more powerful engines, whereas the Soviets were doing pretty much what SpaceX is doing, a whole bunch of engines. And so that's something to consider. I think, of course, the reason the N1 failed is because the majority of the engines weren't tested. It was rushed. The rocket scientist genius who was behind it was dead by the time the takeoff attempt was made. So there's a lot of reasons that rocket failed, that the Super Heavy won't fail. But still, we would do well to remember that rocket, just because of once again, it does have that similarity using a whole bunch of engines. Yeah, for sure. Debris diverter. Yeah. So Joe Hero, that's true. That was an unfortunate surprise when we had all the concrete or whatever that flew around during that static fire. In orbit, also relatively easy since it has been done. That's true. It has been done. We've gotten to orbit a bunch. Raptors look pretty good. Life support, radiation shielding, survival for a 3-year mission to Mars. 6 to 8 months out, 3 months on Mars, same back, allowing for more time is more challenging. It all depends on how long we stay on Mars too. We may stay for 2 years rather than 3 months. Really, if we're going to make it worthwhile, I think that we should stay until the next launch window. I think that's, we'll get a lot more out of it if we stay that long. Really, staying that long on Mars, as far as radiation is concerned, is not that big of a deal. As far as gravity is concerned, yeah, that sucks. That is going to take a hard toll on whatever astronauts go there. I kind of like the National Geographic scenario where they send that first rocket and the people who go have no intention of coming back. That when they make that, those of you, I think a lot of you have seen that, but the guy who ends up, well, I'm giving some spoilers away here, but their commander makes this speech. If this is not the most important thing in your lives, if family or anything else means more to you, and I don't blame you if it does, then walk out that door right now. But Mars has to matter to you more than anything else in your life if you're going to do this. If that is indeed the case, then I think going to stay is something that we should really seriously look at, even with the first crew. Because coming back is going to suck after all that time in reduced gravity. It'll be very difficult for the astronauts who are going to return. And is it really going to be worth it? When they go through all that pain and long-term suffering, maybe they'd want to stay for the long term. Hard to say. Framrick says super heavy thrust puck for 28 engines is going to be insane. Yes, and we're not even sure exactly how many engines. That seems to vary a bit. How come we can't replicate the Saturn V? Well, the Saturn V requires much larger engines on the F1s, and essentially engines that haven't been used for quite some time. And as far as we know anyway, their reusability isn't there, and I'm not even sure if the F1s can relight. I don't know if that's I don't know enough about that. It's not reusable, right? The Saturn V had that issue, and I'm not sure about the engines if they're relightable. That is one of the big issues with a lot of engines. So that is one thing to consider, M2, with the Saturn V. The SN9 will fly, the BN1 will be the focus, says Brood in 62. Yeah, I think that the focus is going to be on every single test that comes after this. I mean, everything up to this point has kind of been playing around, right? Can we do static fires? Can we do these little bitty hops, with the engines that we have and re-land and that kind of thing? This has all been kind of fun and games. Now we're down to the serious stuff. Whether or not the Starship is going to be successful is going to be, really dependent on SN8, SN9, because of the descent, because of the landing. All of that is going to be super important. If we can't get that figured out on a consistent basis here on Earth, we don't have a chance in hell on Mars. Not a chance. Not with 1% or less of the atmosphere. It's going to be so much more difficult there. Hey, Eric Space. It seems like Elon SpaceX has some major challenges ahead with Starship. Yes, indeed. Well, we knew from the beginning that the Starship was going to be a tremendous challenge. It's the most difficult transport system that for interplanetary travel that mankind has ever attempted. And this is a very, very big deal. It's one of the reasons why I have doubts, about getting to orbit in 2021, getting to Mars that fast. By the way, thank you so much for joining us, Eric Space. Your work is fantastic, and I'm probably mispronouncing how you like to pronounce your tag there. But in any event, thanks for joining us. Your work's awesome. Bruden 62. The only thing with Saturn V not reusable, only had to lift a lunar lander and the capsule. And you're right, not much came back. That was a huge rocket, and of course, I got to see it in person when I went to Huntsville. That was a massive rocket just to transport such a tiny thing to the moon, which again demonstrates, just how much of a pain in the ass this planet is in terms of its gravity. I mean, we talk about how perfect Earth is in so many ways, but when it comes to traveling interplanetary or even to our own satellite, the gravity of this planet makes it so difficult. If we were 2/3 the size of what Earth, currently is, it would be a lot easier. Becoming a spacefaring civilization would be a lot easier. Now, then again, could we hold on to our gravity? Would we still have a magnetic field? That's all questions for experts. But still, our gravity is our bane. And if it was a little bit more, we couldn't even get off the surface of the planet. We need return stations with better return options for astronauts. Think return space stations in low Earth orbit with the ability to simulate Earth 1G. Maybe a Von Braun rotating space station with point 0.3, point 0.6. Yep, very good idea, Framrick. Have an orbiting station, or maybe make it as part of the lunar gateway eventually. Something that rotates, that eventually slowly reintroduces astronauts to a 1G environment, because it's going to be killer. It's going to be such a killer to 6 months in microgravity, 2 years, quite possibly anyway, 2 years in, or a year and a half anyway, in 1/3 gravity and 6 months back. We've never even simulated that, and that's going to be very, very hard on any astronaut who attempts to do that. Rudin62 says, I fear the first people going to Mars may be a bit of a suicide mission. No one under the age of 60 to go first. Yeah, it is going to be highly dangerous. There's no question about that. I think it's going to be a very, very risky undertaking. And, politicians, the public, everybody needs to be prepared for that. We need to accept that risk. Everybody who's going, the people who are going understand. They get it. They're willing to take the chance. But you know what? The average person, they're going to see all these people die. Oh, why are we doing this? At the same time, there was just a plane crash in Colorado while I was there, and all the pilot and passengers died. It was a small plane, but they all died. And I don't think that even made national news. So we've got to be we've got to keep that in mind, that casualties are going to happen. The people who are going are willing to accept that risk in exchange for the adventure of doing it, and we need to let them do it. Give them that opportunity. Okay, great. Eric Space said that. I guess I did get it right with the pronunciation. Nice to have you here too. Something must be making Elon so confident. I certainly hope so. I certainly hope so. Ouija Lego. People often forget how huge this planet is, considering other planets in the solar system. Yeah, this planet is very big. We're bigger than Venus. We're bigger than Mercury. We're bigger than any of the inner rocky planets. And that makes things a real pain in the ass. It really does. Trying to get to LEO is an incredible challenge. Once we're there, it takes a lot less delta V to get any place else. The delta V just to get to LEO is the main problem. And being stuck here, once we're on Mars, once we have an established colony there, those people are going to be able to go out to the asteroid belt, to the Jovian moons, that sort of thing, way easier than Earthlings are. Looking ahead, says Sanatogen, babies born on Mars will have a lot of scientific interest, maybe quite tall too. Yes, I think that there will be definitely a change. So I want to see the Lunar Starship to presentation to NASA being like, so Mr. Musk, what do you have? Well, this Starship type hopped 150 meters. So what else? Well, see these renders for the interior and concepts for the moon mission. Thanks. Do you think the Lunar Starship is a viable concept? Check these awesome renders by the community, which has physics and design behind them. Yeah. You're right, Framrick. I mean, there's a lot still to go with the Lunar Starship in terms of getting, as a lunar lander, getting it to the moon. I'm kind of thinking really that Elon mostly had it in mind to just get the Starship on the map, get it some funding, get it some attention from NASA, but not really seriously considering it as a lunar lander. I've talked about this a bunch of times, and so has Robert Zubrin, in terms of the Delta V and the fuel requirements of getting the Lunar Starship all the way to the moon and back to low Earth orbit. The fuel requirements are unbelievable to accomplish that. The Lunar Starship makes a whole lot more sense as a refueling tanker. for a smaller scout type lunar lander. And of course, most of you know that that's the Alpaca. That's what I think we should be using. Space Diplomat, hello. You may be new. I'm at least new to the conversation. Welcome, if so. I want to be a part of the analog studies for the Mars mission. No science background, no degree, any suggestions. Really want to support the mission. 38, the opportunity is passed to become an astronaut. Well, Elon has always said that he's very open-minded when he's talking about the qualifications of people who are going. I mean, the first group of people are going to have to be trained astronauts, I think, in order to maximize the chances of success. But as time goes on, we're going to need all kinds of people on Mars from every walk of life. As I have said before, that's been one of the problems with the ISS, and why I'm so glad we have a larger crew there. So many of the astronauts have been doing basically maintenance work instead of science, and that's a waste of their talents. I hate to put it that way, but it's true. They should have a maintenance crew there, at least one maintenance guy who does most of the work when it comes to fixing and maintaining the thing, and the rest of them should be doing the other work that they trained for. And instead they're running around maintaining things, and maintaining the station instead of doing all of the science projects that get sent to them, which is another reason why we need a private space station too. Somebody needs to get a private space station into orbit, and we need to have more and more opportunities for zero-G manufacturing, zero-G experiments, that sort of thing. And we can do that now. We can do that with the Alpaca. Thank you, Framrick. Alpaca, yes. We can do that with the Falcon Heavy. We don't have to wait for the Starship to start that process. So yeah, I would say, if you're talking about SpaceX, they're pretty open-minded, and checking their website and the different job openings that they have. It doesn't matter what you end up doing there, administration, whatever. If ultimately you want to go to Mars, Elon, I think, is going to be very open to the idea of sending just about anybody to Mars if they can serve a useful purpose there. And we're going to need administrators on Mars as much as we're going to need astronauts. So, it's, if you're 38, I think the opportunity definitely exists. For example, I have a lot of experience in writing grants, and if I were on Mars, I could have an opportunity to write grants for government agencies providing money for scientific experiments on Mars. And if I was actually on Mars, I could show firsthand what was being accomplished there. It's a lot easier as a grant writer to get money from foundations and from government agencies if you're actually on the spot in person, from my experience. So, that's an idea I've had for myself, not being an astronaut either, is grant writing for to secure money from foundations, scientific organizations, governments, etc., that want to perform experiments on the red planet. And there's going to be a lot of science that they're going to want to do there, and a whole lot of stuff to do in so little time. So, I think that would be, a possibility for myself anyway. Do I think refuel the tanker in low Earth orbit is until full and then fuel the Starship from the tanker is safer and better, says Framrick? Yes, I do. I think that that's the best way to do it. I do, however, think that we should instead have a modified tanker Starship that is actually a propellant depot that has active coolant systems and a sun shield, so the propellant doesn't boil off, that sort of thing. And SpaceX is not the only outfit that's looking at this. Tory Bruno talks very, very openly about the a propellant reserve, as he calls it, for the United States, having an orbital propellant reserve to support a cislunar economy, asteroid mining, that sort of thing. He really wants propellant depots in place. The two are arch rivals, but at the same time, they could help each other, and maybe they want to. Could Starship end up being an orbiter for planets and a lander on moons, at least until landing pads are made available? Yeah, that would be another possibility. The Starship is a lot easier to put into orbit, and then send down smaller ships rather than trying to land something that gigantic. It's Robert Zubrin has done the math on what it would take to land this lunar starship on the moon, and it's a lot of fuel. It's a lot of fuel. And a lot of fuel that, at least right now, we can't make on the moon. We can't make in situ, which makes the lunar starship a little impractical for the moon. Not for other places. They're asteroids, Mars, etc. But the moon is short on carbon, which you need in order to make methane, using the Sabatier process, and I keep getting in trouble for pronouncing it that way, Sabatier or whatever it's called. But in any event, you need a lot of carbon, and so far we haven't found it. So reminds me of the game developer of Tempest 2000. We just got a couple links thrown up, so I guess that's what I'm commenting about. M2 says Bezos and Musk would have plenty to gain from a partnership on a private space station. Yeah, I agree. I don't see Jeff doing it though. I'm a little prejudiced, I guess. I'm not a big fan of Blue Origin. But at the same time, yeah, they could accomplish a hell of a lot together if they just did it. But once again, their philosophies are so different. Elon Musk is all about get it done now. If we blow it up in the process, big deal, we make another one. Jeff Bezos isn't like that at all. And I'd have a hard time seeing the two of them working together. They would constantly be at odds with each other. Plus, those two gigantic egos, my God, that would be a tough one for them to work together too. Not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying it would be a tough sell. Hang on for a moment. Gonna do my Coke advertisement. Now I'll just leave it back here, actually. Okay. Let's see. Should have a you are welcome, Space Diplomat, by the way. I'm really glad that you're participating with this. Andy should have a top-up station on the Mars moons, has been mooted before. No need for the death dive, less stressful propulsion landing. Yeah, I'm totally in favor of that. I've even got merch all about that. The Mars base Alpha on Phobos. Phobos most probably is very much like a C-class asteroid. Its mass it indicates very strongly that it's a lot like that, and probably has a lot of water and carbon and exactly what we need to make methalox fuel. Or if we're doing nuclear power of some kind, it has plenty of hydrogen bound in with the water. So, yeah, I'm a big fan of putting a base on Phobos or Deimos, one of the two, or both. Framrick says eventual Mars missions will involve more infrastructure in Mars orbit. Yes, power, solar power satellites, absolutely. Even though it's further away from the sun, it can still generate a lot of power. GPS, refueling, yes, indeed. Infrastructure, staging, we're doing a lot of this on the moon right now. It's actually ironic that we have more staging in place on Mars than we do on the moon at the moment. We put down more rovers, more expeditions on that planet, and learned a lot more about it than we've done on the moon. I mean, granted, we put people on the moon, but that was a long time ago when we lacked certain instrumentation. And most of the samples we've brought back are contaminated and also, from similar areas. So there's a lot of stuff we don't know about the moon that we do know about Mars, strangely enough. So yeah, infrastructure, getting to see the big picture. Yeah, Bezos, he talks a good talk. I mean, I really think that, his ideas are good. I just want to see him happen. I mean, he's had a long time. His company has existed before SpaceX. Show me the money, for God's sake. I find it frustrating. If he can put one thing in orbit, then I'll back off. Then I'll stop being such a jerk about Blue Origin. But until they actually do, I don't know. I don't see a lot of excuses for the fact that they're not in orbit yet. They certainly have the money to be. M2 says, or first of all, Bruton62, the fact that landing on Mars is autonomous and we won't know its success or failure for 20 minutes, we may never know what goes wrong. That's true. Obviously we'll have pretty good, sensors on, maybe a black box or something similar on the Starship, etc., to give us a lot of information. But yeah, we may not be certain exactly what happens with it. We can only hope that it lands successfully the first time, but I would say the odds are pretty much against that. I'd say it's going to be very, very tough. Yes, indeed. Show me the money, Jeff. I definitely need to do that. Okay. It's the real thing. So, do we need to throw astronauts to Mars via direct transfer or via Venus gravity assist? That's a very good question. I say both. That gives us two launch windows. It gives us an opportunity. Then it does give us the opportunity to stay on Mars for a shorter time frame. We go during one launch window and then go during a Venus slingshot and then come back the conventional way, for example. Then we don't have to worry as much about staying there for 2 years. And there's no reason why we shouldn't use a Venusian gravity assist. The radiation's an issue, but I've been reading a lot more about that. There's a lot that NASA has in the works in terms of radiation protection in interplanetary space. By the way, have you guys seen this certain skeptic person on YouTube who's been slamming the living hell out of every aspect of the Starship and going to Mars at all? Have you guys noticed this dude? I have to admit, I haven't seen all of his critiques. The ones I have seen, I have to admit, are a little basic, and assume that some very basic work hasn't even been done on the Starship. I don't know if anybody's noticed that, and I really don't even want to give this guy much publicity, but I was just curious if anybody's seen that. Anyway, Ouija, Lego, anybody? I've always liked the idea of once a Mars colony becomes self-sufficient, in about 20 plus years, the solar system will become more interconnected. Sorry, I lost you there. As new propellants are used and travel between planets becomes routine, so they aren't necessarily isolated forever. Yeah, I would say so. I think that a more interconnected solar system is going to be the way of the future. I think that a lot is going to be gained from that. And I'm excited about that. What I'm still wondering about, though, is can we do 2026 to Mars? Can we really do that? Getting to orbit is one thing. Refueling is another. All we need to accomplish all of these things. The super heavy, it's taken us over a year just to get the Starship to 15 kilometers, and we still haven't even done it yet. And then attempted a landing in a full atmosphere, as opposed to less than 1% of an atmosphere. Can we really do a manned mission to Mars by 2026? Man, that seems really aggressive. I'm interested in your opinions, to be honest. Size of a first Mars mission, 10, 20, I'd say a dozen. Starship with decent shielding, life support. Yeah, if we had a dozen or so, that means that we could put more shielding on the Starship and keep it safer from cosmic rays and interplanetary radiation. I think that a dozen or so would be a good number to start off with. And M2, you might be right, 6 to 8. I like little larger numbers, a dozen, specialists in a lot of different fields. And a dozen seems like a good round number to me, but hard to say for sure. Bruden62 says, yes, I get 1 minute into his video. Can't stand his pessimism, cosmic skeptic. Yeah, I don't want to help his channel. I don't want to help his channel either. It is annoying. And the one thing episode that I did watch all the way through, and by the way, he used a clip from Everyday Astronaut, and I don't think he asked for permission, which I find to be extremely disgusting. Now, I don't know, maybe he did ask Tim. Maybe he did. But Tim is an overwhelmed individual who has a hard time responding to requests. So I would say that odds are, for like Boca Chica gal, you notice that she's the only Boca Chica footage that I ever use. And that's because I actually asked her a long time ago and she said yes. I don't think he's got permission to be using that stuff, which is something that I find personally kind of disgusting. But in any event, enough of that. Small crew has the advantage of life support, current research. Less than 10 is probably the best. And yeah, Framrick, you may be right there. Tony M, hello. I think you've been on before, but I think you're pretty new, if I remember correctly. Do you think that SpaceX may turn the development of Starship and its first steps to the moon and Mars into a reality show? Can you imagine how much revenue it could produce? Absolutely, Tony. I think that would be a hell of an idea. I think it would be a fantastic thing to turn it into a reality show and generate a lot of money. They're already going to do it with Tom Cruise on the ISS, take him up on the Crew Dragon. So why wouldn't they? Why wouldn't they do something like that? I think that it's a very good idea. Starship in orbit by 2021, got to reach Mars by the end of the decade. Framrick is very aggressive. I'm thinking orbit by 2022, but maybe I'm a little more pessimistic, just because of how long it's taken us to do the hop, and we still have all that work to do on the Super Heavy. But I could be wrong. I hope you're right, Framrick. I hope we do manage 2021. We're a long way from the first 100, like in the Mars trilogy. Yeah, you're right, M2. It's going to be tough. It'd be tough to even put 100 on the Starship. That would be one crowded, but not necessarily impossible. Look how many people they crammed onto the Mayflower, for heaven's sake. Sanatogen, Elon will be in his early 60s by 2030. He knows he would have another 15 years after 2030 at best to spearhead his push to Mars. That's true. That's very true. He doesn't have a lot of time yet left. And I'll be in my early 60s too, by 2030. We both have the same problem. We're roughly the same age. So yeah. So that is definitely something. Andy has talked to Tim on the phone, as genuine as he comes across. That's what I've heard about Tim. I really like the guy. At least he was one of my inspirations, actually, to get started on what I do. So who knows? Maybe he did give permission. For all I know. But in any event, I didn't see anything in the description on the video that said that he did get permission. So I really don't know. But I was mentioned on the NASA spaceflight chat during static tests. Was I indeed, Bruden62? Wow. Isn't that cool? Well, thank you for telling me that. I am deeply honored that I was mentioned. That's pretty cool. Yeah, Tom Cruise ISS in 2021. Yeah, it will be fun. I think that it's going to add a lot of public attention to space flight, and to people wanting to go to space. I think that the more publicity space can get, the better. And by the way, I'm in the process, unless one already exists, of putting together a petition for the Biden administration. And if you're one of those people who say the Biden administration isn't going to happen, I'm sorry, it is. And it's just the way it is. If you're a Trump supporter, he's probably going to take another shot at it in 2024. So, he'll come back. Don't worry about that. But in any event, I really want to go after Biden and ask and, and really put a strong petition together to stay the course on the moon, to not shift things over to environmental studies and stuff like that. It's a waste of time. Even if you are a big believer in climate change, it's a waste of time, because if we already know there's a problem with climate change. If you believe in it, then it's a serious problem. So then we need to do something about it. And going to the moon is doing something about it, because as Framrick has pointed out to me many times, and I've researched as well, we can manufacture space-based solar panels on the moon in huge quantities and then send them back into orbit, into low Earth orbit, for 10% of the delta V. It would be so much easier to set up huge amounts of green energy in orbit if we go to the moon, if we get established there and stay the course. But the problem is people who don't think outside the box, narrow-minded individuals who don't really see the big picture and the long-term benefits of going to the moon. They're instead going to say, oh, no, we need to focus on Earth. To hell with that. To hell with it. I'm not saying we shouldn't focus on Earth, but at the same time, if we focus exclusively on Earth, we've had it. We've had it. We're doomed. We have to go elsewhere. We have to get out of the cradle and expand out into the solar system. Mars by 2020 is a Mayflower attempt, or do we wait for better tech? Yeah, I don't know. I would say that, Elon's going to want to go as quick as he can, but at the same time, I don't know if he's going to butt heads with NASA and with the FAA in terms of what's safe for human beings. So that's going to be an open challenge, because he's got a lot of money riding on all these government contracts and everything. So does he really want to, piss off the US government? Well, he's already done it, I suppose, with COVID and all that. So it's hard to say. Wonder if he'll drop the Scientology thing once he gets the overview effect. Ouija, I kind of doubt it. I think he's going to claim that he saw a UFO while he's up there. I think he'll probably bring back some pictures of UFOs, which are really space urine or something like that. Bruden62 just pointed out, we got some pre-hop testing going on apparently, and there's been a lot of those. I'm sure people love watching them, and I'm all for that. It is exciting, don't get me wrong, and I'm very happy for the very large number of people watching. By the way, all of my previous, I haven't had a chance to put it in this description, but you guys know how to support me. It's all in all of my previous live streams. Join Discord through Patreon, and then all the instructions on how to do it. They're in every live stream I've done prior to this one. It's all in the description, and it's dirt cheap. You can do it for $3 a month, 75 cents a live stream to participate in the discussion and support this channel and for it to keep going. However, if you're not able to, I certainly understand. It's the holidays. You got no responsibility to pay my bills, but at the same time, subscribe, like, and I'll be very happy and closer to blowing up this damn Boeing coffee cup. By the way, I am exploring a pretty big interview, and I'm not going to say anything else aside from that because I don't have any confirmations, but I will say that they reached out to me rather than me reaching out to them. But it's a big interview, so we'll see what happens. But I'm excited. That's all I can say is I'm excited. So I'll keep you guys informed. The seasons have been moving to the right for over a decade. Autumn, winter coming later in the calendar. Yeah, that's true. The Mars mission for later waves, trips of common folks. What skills could one start working on now for psychological, physical, emotional readiness? Yeah, I would say psychology might be a good thing to study in general. Absolutely. Psychology, especially for people who are isolated. I don't know if you have time to go back to school, but getting a psychiatry degree might be a very good thing in order to be able to do, because of long-term isolation is going to require psychological support. I would say that that's going to be a very important position on a future Mars colony. Very important indeed. Synatogen, we need larger perspective than just one planet. As Zubrin pointed out, there's almost infinite resources out there. And yes, indeed, there is. Yes, indeed, there is. Oh, Ouija, when you put that petition together, I'll be the first one to sign it. Well, thank you, Ouija. I will have it put together very soon, and I'll be announcing it. If I can't find one that already exists, then I'll definitely put one together, because we need to inform the Biden administration that space matters and what they care about, which includes things like climate change. That's a big issue for them. If they really care about that, then they need to do something about it. And, putting solar panels in space and solar-based arrays is one big solution to that issue. So if they really care about it, then this is a way to deal with it. And a lot of them probably don't even know. They probably don't even have the first notion. They're focused on COVID. They're focused on, getting people back to work. They're not focused on NASA, and they need to get focused on space again. We need to get them focused on space. Like and subscribe, says Framrick. Thank you. So I'll repeat what you just said. Thank you. I'm glad that you like the Discord and live streams, and you're a huge help to this channel. Framrick is a huge help, as is Cyclonics and another space nut. Many people who are big supporters of this channel. They help me out with creating things for it, for the science, keeping me honest on the science, that sort of thing. All of this is incredibly useful to me. I don't know what I'd do without these people. So thank you so much to all of you. M2 says, I would be blown away by the comment I made in a previous video of Delta V needed to mine the asteroid belt from Mars. Yeah, it is kind of shocking, isn't it? And actually, it was Robert Zubrin, me reading Robert Zubrin, where I learned that. And it's true. It is less Delta V from Mars to asteroid belt and back versus versus Earth to moon. Less delta V. It's all about gravity. It's all about gravity. And that's another thing that makes Mars such an excellent target for the human species. There are so many riches, so many resources that we need in the asteroid belt, and Martians can go get that for the human race in a much more effective and efficient way than Earthers can. And that's definitely something that we all need to keep in mind. And almost nobody knows about it. Almost nobody cares, and it pisses me off. We need to spread the word. People need to know just how important space is. Watching Starship Progress is the only reality TV available. No sports movies, etc. Yeah, there is. That is true. It is good reality TV to watch. Framrick says Elon has the vision of Mars colony by 2024. Realistically, is it better to aim at a small crew exploring by 2024 to inspire humanity to explore with settling onwards? Yes, I definitely think so. If we're actually going to put people on Mars by 2024, which in my opinion is near impossible, given the difficulties of landing something like the Starship on Mars, I think it's going to take a lot more unsuccessful tests or successful tests with cargo before we risk doing it with people. But if we do it with a crew, we need to do it with a small crew to start off with. First of all, to start the staging, it doesn't require a huge crew to start setting up all the cargo that arrives. A lot of that is robotic. So, they can just, do some maintenance, check up on these habitation structures and such, make sure that it's in place. But I would say that small crew might want to stay. They might want to go to stay rather than come back. That's what I'm in favor of. But once again, this is, of course, going to be their choice and not mine. I hope the interview isn't like the SN8 hop, perpetually postponed. Bring on. Yes, I hope so myself. Yeah, The Case for Mars. Yeah, that is a great book from Zubrin. I don't agree with everything he says, by the way. I really don't. He was a big opponent of the Lunar Gateway, for example. I totally disagree with him on that. I think the Lunar Gateway is a very good thing. So I don't agree with everything that guy says, but at the same time, when it comes to his rocket science and his mathematics, the guy knows his stuff. And so that's he's a great source of information on that. I hope Arecibo gets attention, says Bruden62. Me too. I think we are playing with fire. We're playing Russian roulette with huge asteroids and comets and such by having Arecibo down. That's one of our most useful tools to protect this planet from dangerous near Earth objects. And to have it down and abandon it, it's absurd. It's ridiculous. It's insane. And the amount of money we've spent on the stupidest things to just abandon that telescope is absurd. So we need a legion of angry astronauts. Well, thank you, M2. I appreciate that. Yeah, Ouija says, spread the word. Hashtag space matters. Yes, space matters. Hashtag space matters. Absolutely. Because it does in a huge way, much more than most people realize. Build an Arecibo telescope in a lunar crater. Yep, we could detect stuff within mega light years. We could indeed. We have to get to the moon first to do it. We have to care about the moon. We have to stay the course. But yes, that is a very good idea. We definitely need to do that. But once again, we need to stay focused on the moon. We can't keep cutting NASA. We can't keep saying, oh, you know what? We'll give you $1 billion instead of $3 billion. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? With the hundreds of billions of dollars that we spend on other government projects, we really going to quibble over a couple of billion for NASA? I mean, yeah, $1 billion is a lot of money, but I mean, come on. It's absurd. It's really absurd. There's so many important things. Jobs, for one thing, lots of jobs at a time when Americans need jobs. I mean, come on. This is a huge amount of employment for the American people to push out into the solar system, and yet we don't realize it, do we? I don't know. It frustrates the heck out of me. Lunar Gateway should be the link. 3 starships via docking adapters, 3 ISS volume, 50 million per starship. Yeah, the Gateway could be much, much more ambitious than we have in mind. When I interviewed Dr. Levin a few months ago, which was fantastic, really nice man. I can't believe he gave me my time, given that he was responsible really for the only life detection mission in NASA history back on Viking in 1976. But yeah, he's very much in favor of a lunar or lunar gateway type lab to experiment on anything that we bring back from Mars, because he's convinced that there's bacteria everywhere there. And his proof is strong, very strong, that there's life all over that planet. And it's something that we need to be very cautious about, especially now, with COVID hopefully behind us soon. The last thing we need is something else. Bruden62, we complain about the Delta V without gravity. Would we have a biosphere to live in? Yep, that is a good point, and that's a question for somebody else. I don't know if we had half the gravity or 2/3. Would we still have what we have today? Not sure. Hard to say. One thing maybe, that asteroid may not have hit us back 60 million years ago with less gravity. And if that was the case, dinosaurs or their descendants would be ruling the earth and not mammals. So yeah, there's definitely the way we are is good for us, at least currently. It's just not good for interplanetary exploring. You're welcome, Framrick. You're welcome. Okay, so we got more people contributing. And once again, can we really do it? Can we really do 2024, 2026? Like I say, I'm thinking 28 at the earliest. I really do. I think that this is just very, very aggressive, very, very optimistic that we're going to be able to pull off 2026 or 2024 for a manned expedition. Cargo, yes. I just don't know. The whole belly flop, the whole hop is going to tell us a lot. It's going to tell us a whole lot. Is there a lunar gateway and an orbital station, an LLO and RHO, the best option of exploring lunar landing sites? Yes, I think so. I believe so. because it's quite in its current rectilinear halo orbit. It can be adjusted by its ionic propulsion, its solar electric propulsion, to move the orbit, to make it easier to set landers down wherever we want them to go, because we're going to need to explore with astronauts different locations, different sites for a base, and alternate sites, etc. Exploring the moon, I think, is going to be easier with a station, especially since, as Zubrin pointed out, that we can send a Falcon Heavy and a modified, what he calls a gray dragon, to the lunar gateway, using a Falcon Heavy. We don't need the SLS. We don't need it at all. Unfortunately, we're stuck with it, but we don't need it. We could, as long as we get the lunar gateway set up, we can start going to the moon really soon, with commercial vessels, and doing it a lot cheaper. 2029, since the launch window goes up by 2 months every 2 years. Yeah, you're right, Ouija. You're right. 2029. Yeah, you're correct about that. There is a difference in that regard. I think the gender to Bruden 62, I think the gender of the first crew to Mars is going to be mixed. I absolutely believe that. And I think that that will be done for political reasons and other reasons, but I think that it's definitely, and I think for scientific reasons, we need to do that. We need to see what impact this is going to have on women as much as we're going to see the impact that it has on men to go to Mars. We absolutely need to see this. A self-sustaining colony on Mars is impossible without women there as well. So I think it will be mixed, in my opinion. So is Starship LEO possible through 2021, 2022, practice refueling, practice entry, landing? Um, pork barrel, hashtag pork barrel. So yeah, I would say LEO. Yeah, I think it's 2022 for me. Which is why I'm really wondering about Mars. Just because we still have so many steps in front of us before we get there. I mean, it's not just the super heavy. We have to stack them. We have to make them work in tandem effectively. That's going to be challenging from an engineering perspective. That's going to be a real challenge. If I'm wrong, I hope I'm wrong. I hope that we get the Starship to orbit in 2021. I'm thinking 2022. But we'll see. We'll see. Tony's saying, looking into the future, can you imagine the news headlines? First child born off planet Earth. What a day that will be. Yes, and that was on the National Geographic thing, by the way. They were looking to shut them down, or they were looking at something. There's something going on with that, and then the first child born on Mars just eclipsed everything. And it will be a huge moment, especially if that child survives and thrives on an alien world, and demonstrates what I believe to be the truth, that humans can adapt to anything. They can adapt to any condition as long as we can breathe, as long as we can eat, that sort of, as long as those things are available to us, we can adapt to 1/3 gravity if we're born into it. Now, that child coming back to Earth, that's going to be a tough one. But in terms of living on Mars, yeah, I think that, but I could be wrong. I could be wrong. That poor child could end up horribly crippled. It's hard to say. And of course, Reese's monkeys are going to be our best way to determine what's going to happen to children. One thing that encourages me is that we've done some more plant growth on the ISS, and the radishes that they've grown there, and they've done very well. They've been very successful in microgravity. So life finds a way. It's one of my favorite things to say. Life finds a way. Yeah, it's Jurassic Park. I don't care. It's one of my favorites, favorite things. favored philosophies. What can we hope to see by 2024 in that case? A number of mini projects can be done in parallel, pointed out in a previous video, adding up to a major project being realized. I think that we'll be seeing the Starship in orbit more in 2024. I think that we're going to see the Starship deploying incredible numbers of Starlink satellites in 2024. I think that we're going to see the Starship, in practical use, doing incredible things, putting up space stations, putting up things to increase man's presence in space, to levels that are, way beyond what we have or have ever thought possible. I think 2024 is going to show that, which is exciting. That's exciting stuff as it is. It doesn't have to be Starship to Mars by 2024 for it to be amazing. Let's get the Starship working, on Earth. Let's get it up into orbit, deploying tons of stuff, and then back down, safely landing over and over again, and make sure that it's going to be successful there before and then, send cargo to Mars and see what happens. See what happens to it. That's my feeling about it. Have I heard of Alyssa Carson, 19, youngest person to go through NASA training, dream of going to Mars, even if it means never coming back? I have not heard of Alyssa Carson. I am interested. I may try to interview Alyssa Carson. I'd be interested to see if she'll give me an interview. I think that would be incredibly cool, especially if she's gone through the training and all that. I think that would be an amazing thing. An amazing thing. Yeah, going young is bad. Everybody says that. But at the same time, if you're willing to roll the dice and take the chance and live your life, from a young age on Mars, wow, what a thing. What a thing. Do I think the first government mission to Mars will be government, NASA, Japanese, ESA, or private? I think it's going to be private. To answer that question, I think SpaceX will get to Mars before anybody else, because that's where their emphasis is. They're looking to get to Mars way, way more aggressively than anybody else. If SpaceX demonstrates Starship Super Heavy successful by 2020 to 2024, does that kill the SLS? Yeah, it might. It might. Once again, if it can be successfully human rated, there's no point for the SLS. The SLS should not exist. If Starship, is effective in every respect. SLS is an outdated dinosaur and needs to go. Going ballistic. Hello, good to see you. One of the pre-flown Starships will be sent to orbit in 2021. It will attempt re-entry just to get flight characteristics and heating data, even if not to land in one piece. It's all about testing in data. Yep, you're optimistic too. Maybe it will. Maybe we will make orbit in 2021. Once again, I'm thinking 2022, but I hope you're right. I hope we do get by 2021. And I'm just basing that on all of the challenges we've experienced already, and we haven't even gotten to the Super Heavy yet, in terms of actually testing it. We still have a lot of stuff to do. But if we can make it to orbit in 2021, wow, I'll be excited. I'll be excited. What's a reasonable date for Dear Moon, says Ouija. I was talking about that. Framrick actually talked about it. Yes, a Crew Dragon Starship hybrid. I'm going to do a video on that. An alternate Dear Moon approach. So I'm not going to give it away here. Just a little bit of a spoiler, a combination of Crew Dragon, Falcon 9, and Lunar Starship. And I'll explain all of that in the video. And Framrick came up with this idea. I think it's a great idea, and I'm going to put it into a video. So I'm going to have to ask for that, for a little patience on that one. But yeah, I'm going to be talking about that. And Ouija, I suppose maybe you can harass Framrick and ask him for his idea. He'll tell you what it's all about. Okay, Bruden62, being delicate, but the first human born on Mars, conceived on Earth or on Mars. Talk about Planned Parenthood. There may be animal experiments first, chicken eggs. Yeah, once again, Rhesus monkeys are the thing. Right now, it's a bad day to be a Rhesus monkey, as they said in the Contagion movie. we're shooting them full of virus and have been for a long time ever since COVID has come up. A lot of them have died as we've been trying to come up with an effective vaccine, simply because genetically they're so similar to us. So yeah, it's a bad, every day is a bad day to be a rhesus monkey. But at the same time, it's better than killing people. I feel for the animals. I really do. I love animals, but it's better than experimenting on people. Okay. Framework. Okay. Dear Moon by 2020. Yeah. Okay. We've talked about that. Joe. If humans will be humans, first baby will be ta-da, the second and so forth. Yes. Very true. I would say that there's a very good chance on Mars that the first baby born is going to be a complete surprise to everybody. And then we're going to have to try to figure it out. We're going to have to try to figure out the best way to raise that child and keep it healthy. And that's going to be a challenge, but we're going to have some really good scientists on Mars. We're going to have some really good doctors. We're going to have a lot of good experts in every field. So I think if there are people that can make sure that a child stays healthy, it's going to be them. So we'll see what happens. Ouija, you're off. So, well, thank you very much for coming by. Yeah, we're running a little low on time. We have a little bit more time, though, about 10 minutes or so. I'm keeping this a little shorter just because I'm going to be doing another one tomorrow morning for the benefit of our folks, our fans in Australia, New Zealand, Tasmania, on the other side of the planet, etc. So I don't know exactly when, but I'll be posting that very soon. And we need to get back to voting topics and all that. I'm sorry about that. I've had so much going on ever since I've come back from Colorado. And plus, my son came to visit me for 3 days. Haven't seen him in a long time. So it's been crazy. But in any event, very glad to be back and doing this. Thanks for everybody showing up once again. Just to emphasize, lots of ways to support this. Like so many of my live streams, this is ad free. So I've got merch. I've got, you can support me through Patreon. That's how you participate in all of this. It's in all of my previous live streams, and I'll get it in this one too, on how to join, how to participate, etc. But throw me a like, smash that like button, smash that subscribe, as YouTubers seem to like to say, and I'll be very grateful. I'd love to have you guys be part of it. Okay, hashtag astromatch.com. Okay, not sure what that is, M2, but I'll say it. Gosh, when will be the first have your children here moment on Moon or Mars? Professional astronauts settlers. Boy, I'll tell you, that's going to be a tough one on the Moon. I don't think it's necessary on the Moon. It's only 3 days away, one way or the other. I don't think people should have children on the Moon. 1/6 gravity, condemning children to that kind of environment, to where there's even Mars is going to be tough for a place like, for children born there. I don't think it's necessary. I think children, for the Moon, they can grow up on Earth and then go to the Moon. Self-sustaining human presence, on the Moon doesn't make as much sense. It's too easy to hit, with thermonuclear weapons, for example. We could easily blow up a Moon colony. It's a lot harder to blow up a Mars colony. So if we're looking at the long-term survival of the human race, Mars, that makes sense to have kids there. I don't know about as much about the Moon, but there could be different ways of looking at it. Moon likely to be scientific or military for the foreseeable future. I hope scientific. I really do. If it's military, I really respect and have the deepest respect for the soldiers of any country that decide to dedicate their time to defending their people and what they believe in. But at the same time, soldiers being who they are, they're trained to destroy the enemy. And as a result, the potential of us getting into a shooting war on the Moon, it worries me. It worries me that we could drop a trigger, especially with limited resources. I hope things stay mostly scientific. Not to say there shouldn't be soldiers at all. There should be. But at the same time, I think the emphasis should be on scientific research, and establishing a peaceful colony there for everybody, and China, of course, being one of the biggest dangers in that regard. And once again, I don't want to slam on China all the time. I have a tendency to do that. Maybe their intention is to be purely scientific. It could be. There's a lot of indications that they are. But their space program is part of their military program. Anything they set up on the moon is going to be military by definition. And that bothers me. I wish they would split that off, separate their space program from their military. I think that would take a lot of heat off the Chinese and off of the rest of the world, when it comes to Chinese ambitions in space. Yeah, it depends on the country that gets there first, is democratic or authoritarian. I guess the Chinese put a flag back on the moon with the Chang'e 5. Framrick just talked about that. Does that trigger a new moon race? I hope so. I hope so. I think the Chinese have thrown down the gauntlet. I think they've said, you know what? Your flags that you put back there half a century ago, radiation has eroded them. They're nothing but a bunch of bare flagpoles now, and we've got our flag on the moon. You guys have been screwing around for half a century, and now we're there. We're the ones who are going after the Earth satellite. Come stop us. Come do something about it. I hope we take it that way, because it should be. We should take it that way and turn it into a race, because it is. Competition drives achievement. It doesn't have to be a violent race. It doesn't have to be a confrontational military race, but it can be, a competition between us and the Chinese. Because right now, the Chinese have the leg up. They do. They've got their flag there. Ours, has been gone for a long time. Radiation ate those things up a long time ago. So they're the ones who are establishing themselves. Joe says, yeah, I wouldn't doubt if we move ahead under the scientific flag, but military logistics lurking in the background. Yep, I would say so. The race is on. I agree. Get to the Ison Shackleton crater. It's a race. Yeah. Yeah, there are limited resources on the moon, at least in terms of establishing ourselves for propellant, for, surviving there. There's a lot less on the moon than there is on Mars. There's a lot of water on Mars, thousands of times more water on Mars than there is on the moon. So much more in the way of resources. There's plenty to share, not on the moon, not on the moon at all. And somebody needs to keep that. Synatogen says, go China. Go humanity, says Framrig. Yep, I'm in favor of go humanity, in which case, yeah, go China, because maybe that'll get everybody else off their ass. We've all got to realize the importance that going into space, going to the moon represents for the human species. China is about to set up the world's first orbiting solar farm in 2025. They're going to have the first one. It's crazy. They've just jumped ahead of everybody else because they have the drive. They put the money into it. They put the effort. They put the expertise. And we've got to get some of that ourselves. Otherwise we're going to be left in the dust. And I'm not just talking about the US, I'm talking about everybody. So yeah, we've got to definitely be part of that. And so Elon's enthusiasm and his optimism about getting the human species to Mars is part of that drive, part of that sense of urgency that we need to get elsewhere, to get out into space. The new U.S. administration, says Framrick, needs to realize that Earth observation is not enough. Go faster, harder, better, stronger. I agree completely. Synatogen says, indeed, China gets moving. It persuades others too. I hope it does. It should. It should, if people pay attention, and we need to pay attention. China have booster, will explore. US have booster, too expensive. Yeah, you're right about that, going ballistic. You're right. And it's ridiculous. We have so much money. The United States is just swimming in cash compared to China. And our total GNP is so much higher than theirs. And yet still, it's like who's taken the initiative, who's aggressively, I mean, who just landed a probe on the moon, scooped some stuff, took off again, and is on their way to Mongolia. Not us, the Chinese. Quite an accomplishment. Nobody's done that before. We've set people down and brought back resources, but a robot going there, scooping it up. And by the way, they were against the clock there too, because they had to do it while they were still in the sun. If they got delayed and the shadow, the moon went into darkness, that robot was going to die before it could get back. And they carried out a very impressive feat of engineering there. And I wish them every success when they put it down in their sample down in Mongolia. They've landed 3 for 3 probes, says Framig. Yep. They're pulling out some big things. The gauntlet's been thrown down, and it's time for the rest of the world to answer, not just the United States, not just countries, but companies as well. In any event, I need to wrap up now. I will be announcing when the next one's going to be coming soon. Let's get lunar probes up and running. Yes, we've got them coming. We've got one coming next year, if all goes well, to be deployed by the Vulcan Centaur. That will be headed out. So M2, great chat. Thank you very much. I appreciate you guys tuning in. Once again, like, subscribe, support me if you can. Lots of different ways to do it. So until we have determined, how promising the Starship looks, how quickly we're going to be able to develop its capabilities, get it to orbit, get it useful and from a practical standpoint, get it human certified, and get it to Mars. I urge all of you to stay angry about space.